The Paris Olympics brought inclusivity to sharp focus, kicking up the gender dispute and debate storm. It started with Algerian boxer Imane Khalif competing in the women's event despite questions over her gender. And it escalated further when US President Donald Trump recently signed an executive order banning trans athletes from competing in women's sports in America. Latest in this row, of course, is a fencer getting disqualified from a women's competition in the United States. It was a USA fencing-sanctioned regional tournament. The woman was up against a trans athlete, but it wasn't the transgender athlete who was disqualified but the female fencer. Let's dive into what has been a controversial episode. Stephanie Turner, instead of competing against Redmond Sullivan, a transgender athlete, took the knee in protest. Following that act of refusal, Turner was issued a black card, removing her from the entire competition. But before we get to why this has become such a big issue, let's address what the rules say at this point. The rule over transgender athletes competing in fencing in USA was brought into execution in 2023. It states that there would be no discrimination over gender in the sport, that all athletes are allowed to participate in the category that they identify with. In Sullivan's case, she identifies herself as a woman, so she was eligible to compete in this category. The athlete made the switch from men's events to women's in 2024, last year, which is what USA Fencing is using as their defense. But there is still anger in America over the participation of trans athletes in the women's category. After taking the knee, this is what Turner came out saying.
When I took the knee, I looked at the ref and I said, "I'm sorry, I cannot do this. I am a woman and this is a man and this is a women's tournament. And I will not fence this individual."
But this is where the rule of the International Fencing Federation, or the FIE, comes into play. It states that a fencer is not permitted to refuse another player for any reason. Given Sullivan was an eligible candidate in USA, Turner refusing to play her opponent on this ground was against FIE's rules, giving the referee the right to remove Turner from the tournament. The decision created a bit of a storm on social media, with the US fencing facing all the ire. But the strongest criticism, in fact, came from a former tennis great, Martina Navratilova, who spewed fury when this news came out.
This is what happens when female athletes protest. Anyone here still thinks this is fair? I am fuming. And shame on USA Fencing. Shame on you for doing this. How dare you throw women under the gender bus?
There is another side to this story. Fencing as a sport isn't driven by power or force like a lot of other events like boxing or wrestling. Neither does the speed or male dominant skills influence it like it happens in football or cricket. It's a game of reflexes, agility and consistent training, which is the reason why in many countries like China, Japan, Korea, male and female players fence and train together. Sure, the competitions are still divided based on gender, but the training is still gender neutral, which was the contrary view that many reflected online as well, questioning Turner for her act of refusal. And as a result of this, it also put an athlete of Turner's caliber under scrutiny. This is a player who's competed in more than 200 fencing matches, including the national championships. So she isn't a newbie on the circuit, who's obviously now stuck between a flurry of war of words, with considerable support coming in for her, yes, but also for her opponent.
I knew what I had to do because USA Fencing had not been listening to women's objections. But I don't think that it's going to be easy for me from now on going to fencing tournaments. It's very hard for me to do this. It will probably, at least for a moment, destroy my life.
This incident, of course, has raised a serious debate. Shouldn't the governing bodies come together and lay out uniform rules that is followed by all athletes? Now, I understand USA sporting body's decision to include trans athletes is to make sure nobody misses out. But then where does US President Donald Trump's agenda stand here then? If there are concerns over the rule, shouldn't the governing body address them? And the debate is, if there is so much anguish among players over trans athletes' participation, could they introduce a separate category altogether? Of course, the question will always be, will they have enough participants then? Because medals and top honors need to be earned through the course of a whole tournament with the best in the business lined up. But the counter view is, if that does happen, won't more trans athletes take up sports diligently? But is that really the solution? It's something that all countries and governing authorities across various sporting disciplines should come to the table to discuss.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
No, I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Bluntly, Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.